All right. Well, welcome. This is actually the 40th session of Neighboring 101, and this is what we call a bonus session because this isn't the normal third Thursday of the month, but we love to work in local topics or things that are timely in nature on these bonus dates, and this is one of those. But thanks for joining us. This is where we gather together with people of like mind, interested in neighbors and neighborhoods, and hear from some really leading specialists in topics related to that from across the United States. And that, we hope, helps with both community and personal development. So thank you for joining us. If you're not able to attend live, all of our videos are posted on YouTube and in the emails that go out to you each time as a reminder or a recap video. Those links are all included at the bottom of those emails, and this one will be too. Well, our guest today is Mark Applegate. Mark is the Director of Safety and Security and a Dementia Care Specialist at Senior Age. That's the current, that's the modern current name of what some of us knew was the Southwest Missouri Office on Aging for a number of years, but Senior Age. And he's been there, I believe, about 7, maybe going on 8 years. Now, his work at Senior Age focuses on their theme, which is working together, finding options, bettering lives. He's an IT leader. He's a friend to seniors and caregivers. He's an advocate for the vulnerable, a support group leader. He's a blogger. I know we're going to hear more about his blog today, and someone who knows a lot about dementia and Alzheimer's. And he's also a former business owner. Wow, how does he have time to do all these things? And then best of all, he grew up in Republic, Missouri, which is where I live. I love mentioning that fact that he was a baseball player there. I'm sure he appreciates me mentioning that.
I do.
But one other thing I want to share in Mark's introduction, and I don't think I shared the sound. Yeah, I'm hoping he still continues with us today, even after I share this little video from him.
Yeah.
But he has a unique fundraiser that he's done over the years. And one of the years got quite a bit of media attention, and I wanted to be sure and share this with the group as part of his introduction. So here we go. Hopefully this will skip the ad and not include that. We shall see. Look at that. Best laid plans. I'd already watched that today, had it all queued up, and now we just get to look at that.
Hi, my name is Kirk Moreland. I've been at Chapman's for 31 years.
Here we go.
Summer is considered the longest day of the year. It's also a day to shine a light on the darkness of Alzheimer's disease.
And a Missouri man decided to do that by taking on one of the Cape Girardeau's best-known landmarks. Madison Stewart reports.
My mom's had the disease for 14 years. My grandmother passed away with it, and my uncle on her same side, her brother passed away with it. So it's very personal for me.
So Mark Applegate takes a very personal, very long walk up these stairs at the Common Pleas Courthouse. He's raising money and awareness for the Alzheimer's Association with each step.
Because you'd be shocked that even though 1 in 3 people are affected by this disease, people don't know anything about it.
This is actually day 3 of Applegate's 4-day, 36-hour climb. His fundraising goal? Exactly $5,280.
Well, my mom, as she started getting dementia, when you'd ask her a question that had a number for an answer, she would kind of roll her eyes and say 5,280, because she could remember that, because that's the number of feet in a mile.
Jeremy Kober is with the Greater Missouri Area Alzheimer's Association. He believes with every step, Applegate is helping people talk about the disease.
With dementia in general, people really don't have those conversations. They'll talk about diabetes, or they'll talk about heart disease. They'll even talk about cancer, but there's a certain stigma to this.
Oh, she's a wonderful person. You loved her. She still love her.
That's why Applegate honors his mother with each step and uses this blog to track his journey.
Every day it seems like I get a call saying, hey, I saw your blog, and I don't know anything about this disease, but my mom seems to be repeating herself a lot. Is there something I need to look into that, and stuff? So, huge disease that no one knows enough about. So that's what I try to help fix.
In Cape Girardeau, Madison Stewart, Heartland News.
Mark started his stair climb in Kansas City on Monday, spent Tuesday in St. Louis, and is headed to Springfield tomorrow. If you'd like to learn more, you can find a link to his blog when you check out the story on your KFES News app.
All right. And I mentioned he raised $5,200 in the process of that. Whoop,
I'm still there. Are you?
goodness.
Oh,
But
technology.
I found that. I love that. Wanted to be sure and share that.
Thank
Mark,
you very much.
thanks for all you do to advocate, and thank you for being on today to help educate.
That was an interesting 4 days for sure. Kansas City, I was at a loft apartment in the library district. St. Louis, I did the stairs at the Enterprise Center or the Blues Play, which I did a great interview on KMOV. The Court of Common Pleas in Cape, and then at Hammond's Tower in Springfield. And if I ever do another stair in my life, I would like to avoid it if I can. It was a challenge. I'm doing it again this year, by the way, but not the stairs. I have a different kind of plan for this year. I'll share it in a minute. But well, thank you all for coming. I know it looks like in the picture I'm just as athletic as I look like in the picture, which will make it unusual when I start talking about my fundraiser later on. But been kind of thrown into the Alzheimer's world. I'd like to know a lot less about it. I'd like it to be cured to where I don't have to think about it anymore. But I guess it kind of all started 2009. My mom was having, she'd lost my grandmother, her mom, and her dad also within a reasonable amount of time with each other. And she was struggling with depression, with anxiety, and kind of everyday life. If you remember right, 2009 was the Great Recession, if I remember right, or right around in there anyway. Times were a little bit rough like they are now, and she was just weighing on her a little bit. So she got some therapy help and did a few days of inpatient where they could really get a good feel for what was going on. And they said, you need to lighten up on the stress, and they gave her a bunch of good help, good talk therapy, good meds, and all this. And then they also said, oh, by the way, you also have a mild form of dementia. She told us, she gave us the little sheet when she got out, and she seemed great. We talked to her a lot, all the time, and she didn't seem like what we thought of as dementia. So it kind of fell off the radar for a long time, actually. She didn't seem to change at all for years. Now, I say that, I live in Bolivar now with my wife. She lives over in Republic, and then I work in Springfield. So most of what I talk to Mom, I'd call her every day on the way home from work. I get to see her about once a month, probably in person. It just, our paths didn't cross in person a ton, but they did on the phone a lot. Well, you'll find out if you have friends with dementia that they can fake things on the phone that they can't fake in person. So if you ask them a question and it takes a minute to answer, for all you know, we're doing dishes or dogs barking or whatever. They're not paying that much attention. They don't know, you don't know what's going on, but we didn't realize it started getting worse, and until Thanksgiving season actually of 18, so it'd been 9 years at that point. During that year, me and my two siblings also kind of noticed that she seems like she's kind of messing up some of our stories. Like we'd ask a story about something, and one we'd heard our whole lives. We love those old stories, and she'd have the details wrong, or someone that passed away that hadn't passed away or something. So we kind of all as a collective siblinghood talked about it a little bit on the side, said, I wonder if Mom's struggling a little bit. It didn't seem like she's tracking as good as she used to. She was in her, at this point, I guess she'd be about, she was 65 when she was diagnosed, so be about 73 or so roughly. We thought, it's probably just kind of normal part of aging, just making little faux pas here and there, like people like to jokingly call it a senior moment or something. I don't know. But the cases increased a little bit. And we talked, and then when we had this Thanksgiving dinner, me and my siblings kind of prepared in advance to ask her this. We said, Mom, my kids always joke and say, I parent exactly like you parent, but whenever they go to your house, they get it real easy. So pretend like I'm getting in trouble. What would you tell me? And we'll see if it's the same as what I would tell them. My thinking was, Mark Allen Applegate, you come here right now, or I'm going to get the switch or whatever, the standard line. Well, who was a very, very good sport, was like, oh no, and she normally played all over that. No, that's all right. No, I don't want to do that. it'd be embarrassing or whatever, and we didn't really think about it very much at the time. Picked a few more times. Oh, come on, do us, do it for him, and it became obvious to us the problem wasn't that she wasn't willing to do it because she was, like I said, a great sport. She couldn't remember what my first middle and last name was. That was the problem. So it kind of at that point we realized, we've kind of let this go a little bit too far, kind of brushed it off. So we kind of as siblings said, we need to talk to the doctor a little bit. And we talked to her primary care physician and in advance of her going to her yearly physical, and said, she's struggling with some of this stuff. And when you get in your 70s generally, and it's usually younger, and if there's a history of it, you'll usually get to do what they call a mini mental health exam or mini mental state exam, which is just if you've ever been to the doctor at that age, they ask you to count backwards by sevens from 100, ask you to draw a clock at 2:55 a.m. p.m. and they have you memorize these 5 words, and they come back and do it. Well, she bombed that badly, and we at that point realized, oh no, we need to figure this stuff out. We kind of had what I refer to as the deer in the headlights look. We didn't really know anything about dementia other than that grandma had it. My uncle had yet to get it yet. So, and grandma, honestly, not to make a stigma out of this, but she was much older. She was in her 80s when she developed it. And she had some other health concerns too. So it was kind of off our radar. So we started learning. That's the first thing we did is started learning. We went to the Alzheimer's Association. I was fortunate to work for the Senior Age, the Area Agency on Aging. Started studying like crazy, honestly. The best way to study the disease is Alzheimer's disease research centers. There's 33 of them, I believe, throughout the United States, usually in a big hospital arrangement. WashU in St. Louis is widely regarded, I would say, as being, if not the best, one of the best in the world. It's just phenomenal. I got involved in studies there. KU, also extremely highly regarded. I got in some, talked to them, got in some clinical studies with them, and Vanderbilt. That's the 3 I kind of picked over in Nashville. So I subscribed to all their blogs. I started reading, started learning, and started visiting mom in person a heck of a lot more than I did before. But it got to the point where it was dangerous for her to be alone. An example, there's many examples. One example I unfortunately like to share is we was visiting one day, and she asked if I wanted some tea, and she was still talking relatively well. She would repeat herself, but she was talking relatively well, and she could walk great. She was physically great health. She brought us all teas out, and I noticed her tea looked different than my tea did. And I looked at it, and she put marbles in it instead of ice cubes. Not ideal at all, So my stepdad, they've been married 25 plus years. My parents got a divorce a long time ago, and they've been married 25 plus years. He knew her real well and kind of supplemented her existence a lot of times, and we were cute where they'd finish each other's sentences and all that. I mean, not disparaging him at all, but he filled in the gaps for her a lot of times. He was getting to the end of his rope too, where he was having trouble keeping her safe. And they lived on a highway in Republic, which is Highway 60, which is, I think it's right there with the highway into Atlanta with traffic. I don't know, maybe there's busier roads than that, but good grief, there's a lot of traffic there now. Senior Age helped me with some grab bars and some different things in the house, trying to make it safer. And we tried security stuff. We just got to the point where it wasn't safe. So we got to the point where we thought, well, my stepdad probably isn't going to be able to care for her in the home the same as we can get care elsewhere. We didn't have the money to hire a full-time 24/7 person. So we had to start looking at nursing homes, honestly. We had no real choice. She would wander away and lose her cell phone, and we'd search for her, and all sorts of issues that made just really no other choice. So we started looking into nursing homes, found one we really liked, but it had a year waiting list. So you always got to look in advance if you face the same situation. You want to start thinking about it before you need it, because the ones you're going to like are going to be ones with a waiting list. Don't be surprised it's like that. So we had her unfortunately placed in a nursing home not too far after then, really, right around, it's been about 5 years now. So it's sometime around this time of year, a little bit into December maybe. And she did pretty well there, honestly. But it was really hard on the whole family because she was, she's a very, very important part of our family. She's a wonderful person. She's a sweet lady. She played the piano for 60 years. Probably more than that, actually, probably 70 years. I mean, she was just a little girl, and got to the nursing home, and she had to be in a memory unit because she was what they call a flight risk or an elopement risk, where she could get out. And this time of year is extremely important. You keep an eye on that. So it was that first year was really, really hard. I have a little video if I can share that real quick. Let me pull this.
Yeah, I've got it here for you. Even
YouTube.
yeah, I've got it for you.
This little video, when they're playing the piano was, let me set it up just for a second. She was, like I said, she played it for 60 plus years, but she could speak and she could sing a little bit, but even a few months after she'd been in there, she'd fallen several times, because that's another common thing that happens with people with dementia is they lose strong walking ability depending on which version they have. And we'll talk about all that in a minute. She'd fallen several times, but she could still play the piano really well for all things considered, And what was really interesting is in this memory unit, there were 17 ladies, which I call the Sweet 17 in my blog, that most of them honestly didn't talk, or if they talked at all, very little, or they would mumble, or they would kind of have the word salad, where they would just kind of, words would come out, but they didn't belong with each other and stuff. They'd all gather around the piano, and Mom would play the piano, and they would start singing, and it was just beautiful. If you was a finely tuned music theory person, you might kind of grimace at times, but just to hear them playing was just, hear them singing with her playing was phenomenal. But this video is kind of sentimental to me, because it was one of the ways I knew things were going to be okay. So go ahead and hit the button.
Really remarkable with all the memory concerns that she's able to play the piano that way.
Oh yeah, and it opens up people that weren't even talking before, and half those ladies could, even if they couldn't literally talk, they could mouth the words and stuff. It was beautiful. Yeah, I can't watch it without getting verklempt. So I've watched it 100 times. Jumping in right now, I'm thinking we need to learn as much as we can, even while she's in a nursing home. We need to understand this thing to make sure it isn't just meaningless. If you let something like this become meaningless, all the memories go away and no good comes of it, other than just sheer sadness. So we started learning. I started writing my blog. I've dabbled with writing off and on for my whole life. I always kind of liked it. I'm not a great writer or anything. I'm kind of write folksy and have fun with it. And thought, what kind of name my blog? What do you name a dementia blog that's going to make people not depressed? So what I came up with, you'll laugh at this a little bit, is digitalcornbread.com. And my thinking on that, digital things like your DVDs and stuff like that are all actually comprised of ones and zeros, or on-off switches, or however you want to put it. But it's a jillion of them, and it turns something as simple as an on-off switch or a 1-0 into a picture or a video or a movie or whatever. So it's a really complex thing made really simple. Corn, I've got a corny sense of humor. I don't know if it'll come through today because I'm always kind of nervous in public speaking. Bread is kind of a Christian blog, although it isn't, I don't push it super hard, I guess, but I would not be sustained as well as I have been without my faith. I can assure you that it's been an important part of my last 5 years too, and it's been an important part of my mom's last 5 years too. I'm certain of it. So I've been blogging now since 2018. I've accumulated 900 articles. I used to do it every day. Now I'm only doing it once or twice a week. Unfortunately, I'm too much going on. I think last I looked, 12,000. I'm sure there's some bots and some thises and that's, but there's a good number of people hitting it not because of my somehow wonderful skill, but because there's a tremendous demand for people in the same boat as I was with the deer in the headlights. Look, what in the world's going on? She's repeating herself. She's messing up the story. She's making mistakes where she didn't normally make mistakes. So the demand is there. It's tremendous.
Let's talk about some of that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of that demand and of course I think the tips and things you had and suggestions are really, really very good. Very, in all likelihood, we have neighbors that have dementia and just knowing how to interact with all of this. I love that type of approach.
Yeah. 1 in 3 people know somebody with it. So I can almost guarantee you know somebody that has it in your neighborhood. 120,000 people in Missouri alone, 6 million in the country have been diagnosed. So with that number, I think in the Springfield city, the size of Springfield compared to Missouri and as a whole, we probably have 10,000+ in Springfield, I'd guess, maybe. Republic, a town of 20,000, probably has at least a couple thousand. So, and that's not including people that haven't been diagnosed. So very high likelihood you have somebody. It's the prevalence of the disease is a lot higher than a lot of people realize. Kills more people every year than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. It's shocking. Again, the rate of it's increasing is shocking. They're expecting 11 million. I mean, they're expecting the rate it's going right now. It's increasing dramatically. I'll put it like that. In the bottom corner of that, it mentions heart disease actually went down since 2000, but Alzheimer's went up by 145%. It's largely because the population is getting older, sure, but there's more to it than that. So to me, to be a good neighbor of someone with dementia, which is kind of the whole reason I thought a neighboring podcast would be great to come on, is it's pretty straightforward to me. It's kind of like being a good neighbor to anyone that's a little bit different than we are, maybe, to me. So I kind of broke it into 3 little steps: learning about what's going on, and then kind of applying what you learn by caring about them, and then sharing about it with other people that are not gossiping, but sharing in a way that other people can understand too. Because apparently people don't completely understand dementia. It's every single day as a dementia specialist, I get calls. I got a call last night at 8 o'clock at my cell phone at home. Mom's had what was it? She had a very unusual one. She was diagnosed because she had taken a tremendous amount of calcium in the supplements, which is not the normal way a person gets dementia, so to speak, but had to research it because there's a bunch of different types of dementia. So if you don't care, maybe we'll just go through some of my questions real quick that I kind of listed out, and as I sent some of the pre-show stuff to David, we can kind of give you all a real basic understanding of dementia. So that part you can kind of use that as springboard onto your own studies if you want to. It's kind of, to me, some of the really, really basics about the disease that a lot of people have really, really wrong. And with that knowledge, then you can go to the next step and work with your neighbors a little bit, and we'll talk about that too. So kind of the biggie is the difference in dementia and Alzheimer's. All the time people will say, well, mom doesn't have Alzheimer's, but she's got dementia. Because it seems like dementia might be a lesser form or something. That's not unfortunately the case. What the difference are between those two things, dementia is the big term. It's the cancer, if you will, of the topic. Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia. So dementia is the umbrella of symptoms, umbrella term of symptoms. It's like the syndrome or whatever. So the things like, memory issues and trouble retracing your steps and stuff like that all fall under that set of category of conditions called dementia. But there's multiple different causes of it. Alzheimer's is one of the causes of it. It's the biggest one by far. About 2/3 of the folks that have dementia, it's the Alzheimer's type. But there's other types that are very big too, and a lot of them have made the news a lot lately. Frontotemporal dementia is what Bruce Willis has. He started out, they said he had aphasia, which is where you have trouble speaking and remembering words at the tip of your tongue and stuff like that. But then he was diagnosed with frontotemporal. Another really common, not common, but reasonably common type is called Lewy body dementia. That's what Robin Williams had. Terrible version of the disease, unfortunately. It's very similar in some ways to Parkinson's dementia, which is also kind of under the same umbrella, Parkinson's disease. Lewy body dementia's got a lot of the tremoring like Parkinson's can, but it also has hallucinations. It has a certain gait that as you walk, it looks different a little bit. Posturing and stuff like that. There's just ways you can kind of tell. So, but the kind of the bottom line of all those things is the type you have of dementia will show you the type of symptoms you're going to expect, kind of. And regardless of the type, all of them are progressive. They all get worse over time, which stinks. They all, generally speaking, will take the person's life if something else doesn't take it before. I say, let me back up for a second. Not everything it is a dementia is the same, but is in that realm. There are a few types that are kind of you can push back on, but so that's kind of the biggie. So if someone says, well, he doesn't have Alzheimer's, he has dementia, they don't completely get that part of it, and that's understandable because it's been one of those things a lot of people have thought for a long time. Is it contagious? No, you'd think it would be sometimes, but no, it's not even a little bit contagious. There's nothing about it that's even remotely contagious. But I've been asked multiple times if I hang around people too much, is it going to give it to me? No, not like that. Is it hereditary? Great question. Generally speaking, it's not. There's one group of people that get it that have a certain gene mutation called APOE4. If both your folks have it, then your odds go up by quite a bit. My family is not that way. My family has one set of those genes. One of the parents' gene had it, the other one didn't have that mutation. So we have a higher likelihood. So I would think of it more like a propensity. So grandma had it and Uncle Joe had it and mom has it, but Uncle Don didn't have it and great grandma didn't have it. And so we have a propensity. So it's kind of I am not going to say it's not hereditary, but it's very small numbers that are truly hereditary, other than the propensity maybe to have more likelihood to get it. And you'll know people that say, oh, it runs in the family. Well, maybe one, maybe the other, honestly. Okay. Can be prevented. This is some good news. I would like to say 100% of the time it can be prevented. It can't be prevented 100% of the time, but there's a whole bunch of things that you can do to help prevent it. And it's really easy to remember. What's good for the heart is good for the brain. So if you're going to do something that's good for your heart, it's also going to be good for your brain. Things like managing your blood pressure. I'm going to give you a list of things that all of us kind of agree we should do that, and we don't always do it. Blood pressure, blood sugar, eat a good diet, exercise, 4 or 5 times a week, preferably. Don't smoke, don't hit your head, which has nothing to do with your heart, but don't hit your head is another preventable one. Stress management, blood sugar management is another big one. It's okay to have those problems, to have blood pressure and blood sugar and all those issues, but maintain or manage them with meds. Don't let them just get out of control. That's kind of the rule of thumb on that. There's some other kind of unusual ones. Oral health, for some reason, seems to have some issues. Take care of your teeth. I don't know why that would have an issue, other than the fact that some of the systems are all interconnected, and it's all awful close to your brain too. Hearing, if you have hearing loss, hearing, if you need a hearing aid, use your hearing aid. It's a modifiable risk factor. It's a surprising number actually on that one. There was a big study at WashU not long ago. I think it was WashU or KU. I mean, it's a lot of people that could prevent some, or at least push back on dementia by taking care of their ears and making sure they can hear well and everything. I guess it probably keeps your brain busy and stuff, and it lets you forces you to keep active, you know. So
Yeah.
Can it be cured? No, there's no cures. We're getting closer and closer every year. WashU has a lot of studies going on. I've personally been involved in. I should have counted it before today. Probably about 20 big studies, because I've got enough of them in my family that I think that it's a pretty good way to kind of get a feel for it. I've been involved about 20 or 30 that are kind of small ones, but what's interesting about it is they don't know that the cure is going to be one single pill, because there's several things that are kind of causing it. The plaques and the tangles we've all kind of heard about. If you've ever heard of that being talked about, there's a couple different protein substances that, and I'll let you research that on your own. Kind of, it's just simply it's called beta amyloid plaque, and tau tangles are thought of to be the pretty good likelihood it's what's causing it. But there's other kind of theories that are kind of go along with it that are also probably part of the puzzle. So a cure one of these days will probably look like a series of pills, therapies, and lifestyle changes. I need to stress really important here that there is no cure. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, all you got to do is take this supplement or this or that, I have a seminar I can show you that's only $499 that will tell you how it all works, and you can be without this stupid disease. It's just not real. I don't know any other way to put it in that. And I on my little blog, I refer to that as running through the Bruce Willis test. And I love Bruce Willis. Don't get me wrong, and don't hear me as being using his name in any sort of negative at all. I've always got a kick out of his movies and stuff, but he's loaded. He's got plenty of money. If there was a cure, Bruce Willis would be taking the cure. If all the people that Ronald Reagan had money, he would have been cured if there was a cure out there. I mean, they have access to people, they have access to meds, they would have known. So trust me, there's not a cure. So if someone comes to you with a cure, just walk away.
And you mentioned some of the tests, Mark. I had to share the picture of you with the various electrodes on your head, because that's a keeper.
Oh, it is. It is a keeper. I've got one of them that they told me, look like you're shocked. So I kind of did that number, that was a deep brain stimulation test is what it is. And I had that a couple weeks ago at WashU, and they basically put these probes on your scalp. It wasn't internal. I did the non-surgical version. And one of the little, I don't know how many you showed. I don't have the screen completely up. They have a little readout that shows which probes are touching your skin, which ones aren't. And then they have you go through a series of things like memory tests, and they watch what parts of your brain are lighting up, which ones aren't. And they stimulate parts of your brain with it, and this is and that's. And they even had me watch 10 minutes of the movie The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, because they've used it over the years so much. And it's got a lot of scenes where gunfire's up here, where at the same time something else is happening down here. So you're kind of looking back and forth, and they're watching your brain and stuff. So it's really interesting how some of that works. I don't know if you probably can't see in my room. I got pictures of my brain kind of all over my room because I've done several of these.
Well, it's just good to know that you have one, to have some photographic evidence of that, right?
I do. Just, like back in the 30s, Dizzy Dean got hit by a line drive or a pitch or something, and he said, they x-rayed my head and they didn't find anything. So, yeah, they MRI'd and PET scanned my head a lot, and they did find some stuff in there. I don't know how much function it is sometimes, but it does pretty good. Couple other real quick Q&A things about it. I thought it was just an old person disease. The highest risk factor of getting the disease is your age, absolutely. And for every 5 years you live after 65, your odds go up by a certain percent. But it's not an old person disease. And it's certainly not just a part of getting older. I mean, I know people in their 80s, 90s, and 100s that I wouldn't play brain games against and wouldn't try to even, if you could brain arm wrestle, I wouldn't arm wrestle. I'm gonna put it like that. It's not a normal part of getting older. It's something that happens to you. It's a syndrome or a disease. How do you know if you're getting it? There's a warning signs. Yeah, there you go. Beautiful. The first one on there, memory changes that disrupt daily life. That last little section of that is really, really important. Disrupting daily life. We all, as we get older, even if we don't get older, I mean, when we're younger, we forget things. I mean, where do my stupid car keys go? I get that. That's a normal part of getting older. Honestly, it's something that gets worse. But grabbing your car keys, getting in the car, and driving halfway to the store, and then forgetting why you're going to the store, or that you're going to the store, or how to get home—that's where it becomes different. Other things, the problem solving is a big one. Got a friend that was a early onset case. He was, I know his wife for a while. He's passed away, unfortunately, since. He was a military guy for until he retired young, was a mechanic. And one day he was working on the car, and he called his wife out and said, "Hey, can you bring me that tool thing that takes this out?" And all I needed was a wrench, and he couldn't remember what the wrench was called. Took him to the doctor. His wife took him to the doctor, and they asked him some questions. They asked him what a social was. He couldn't remember what a social was, and he was in the military for 25 years or something like that. You get asked your social plenty. I mean, he should have known that one for sure. And he couldn't remember any of his social. So the problem solving, familiar tasks, confusion in time and place, all that stuff's good. You could probably share that out if you want to too in the notes, but repeating yourself, I guess one way to think of it is you'll recognize it when you see it too, when you're with your neighbor. I hate to say it that way. I mean, you still want to educate yourself on what kind of qualifies as being this, but you'll kind of recognize that you see it too. There's a measure of that at least. My mom would repeat herself in the same conversation 2 or 3 times. I don't mean like in a day. I mean in 15 minutes, she might ask me the same question. I just gave her a good answer. She acknowledged my answer, and then she asked me again because she'd forgot she'd asked it. So you kind of get to where you recognize it too. But number 9 down at the bottom, withdrawing from work and social activities, that's an area that the stigma ends up playing in, and that's where part of where our neighboring can factor in too. Helping them and helping society. I mean, we're talking about jousting a windmill with a whatever, but society needs to understand that it's they're doing the best they can, and it doesn't always work that well. So what the tendency is that they go to the restaurant, the waiter, waitress, they say something unusual or whatever, or they lose their filter and say something inappropriate, and they get looked down on, and they think, and they get embarrassed, and they know they don't want to go back anymore. And it's really bad on people just in general as we age to withdraw from the public. We got it. We were built. We were wired in community. We were wired to be with other people, and when we're not, I think we all learned from 2020 to 22 and a half. It's not very good on us to sit at home all the time without other people. It just isn't good for us. We're designed to be in neighborhoods and in families and in communities and stuff like that. And it's bad on your brain. One big research study was done on that, said, I forget what the number is now. I should have brought it up, I guess. Being socially isolated is the equivalent of smoking something like 18 or 22 cigarettes a day. It's that bad on your body, which seems weird. Why is it bad on your body? Your body's not designed to shut down from interaction like that. It causes us to be kind of slothful and lazy and not have our brain working as hard as it does. So it's not good on us. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So how do we apply this to our neighbors? That's kind of why we're here too. Recognizing the signs, some of the stuff I told you, some stuff in that infographic. And I had neighbors growing up. Now looking back on it, I think, well, I bet, that was probably why they did what they did. If you can see these signs and recognize it, then you can kind of jump in and help a little bit. If you see someone you think might have it, kind of try to take them under your wing as best you can, and especially their family. Their family will be hopefully visiting a lot. Talk to their family off to the side and say, "Hey, I'm your loved one's neighbor. How are they doing? Number one, can I have your cell phone? Here's my cell phone. If something comes up, I'll call you. That sort of thing. Kind of a neighborhood watch program for your person with dementia." I bring that up because wandering, I mentioned it earlier, is a huge thing. In dementia, they tend to walk outside, not thinking anything of it because they've walked outside their whole life freely, and they should be able to. Might walk down to the end of the street and get there into the driveway and get the newspaper and think, oh, I see Joe down the street. You walk down to see him, and pretty soon they're lost, and they keep walking. My mom got lost 2 or 3 times, and dropped her cell phone, and we drove around and drove around. You think searching for your pooch that got away is hard? Finding her was hard. We finally found her, and it's like, oh, sweet, we finally found her. So working with them, your neighbors, to remind them to help, to watch for wandering is good, and to watch for them yourself. That doesn't mean that every person with dementia is going to be for sure a wandering risk, but it's more and more prevalent, it seems like. I lost one friend from Republic, actually. His mom, not that long ago, it was Greene County, actually. This in the wintertime, not a few years ago, wandered away. They did a silver advisory on her, like they see on KY3, and they didn't find her in time in the wintertime. Got another very good, it's a wonderful lady. Lost her mom, her grandma. Her grandma was a runner, very athletic, like my mom was. My mom wasn't a runner, but she walked tremendously all the time. This lady was a runner, and she got away one day and couldn't get back. And she lived near the Mark Twain Forest and got up into the forest. And tragic story, they weren't able to find her for something like 3 or 4 weeks, and they was only able to identify her through dental records. I can't imagine living that 3 weeks myself. I can't imagine trying to find time to sleep when then your mom's out there somewhere. So if you hear nothing I said the whole day, watch for wandering, because it isn't something, it's a small thing that happens, something that happens a lot. And this time of year is the worst time to have it happen.
Well, that's an important takeaway, but I thought your information about salespeople was interesting too.
Shady salespeople? Oh man. Watch for shady salespeople, especially if your neighbor. You'll see that we've all had the shady salespeople come by. If they come to your house, hopefully they come to you first, and you see them go to your neighbors. Follow them over there. You can go onto the dark web and amazingly get databases of names and phone numbers and addresses of people that they suspect have dementia. And I guarantee it ain't because the Alzheimer Association sold it to them. They just have ways of hacking this or that. All the time I get calls from people in this realm. My loved one, I had one not long ago, I'll put it like that, down south of here. My loved one had just bought a $30,000 car a couple of years ago and sold it for under $1,000 to someone they didn't know, and it was paid off. And they legally had the right to do it and had no restrictions on their life, such or powers of attorney or people watching over them. So the person just shafted them, and there's not a whole lot you can do. We can report it to the state and try to get elder abuse or exploitation filed on people, but half time they're gone, or you never know. So we could try that. We do try that sort of thing, try to fight it for them, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. As you're looking for ways to help someone, a neighbor with it, with the disease too, the caregiver, instead of asking, hey, can I help you do anything? Or what can I do to help? And that's always a good question, don't get me wrong, but think about going into, let's say Best Buy, and you walk into the computer department, you're not a computer savvy person, you want to look around for a minute, and immediately someone walks up to you and says, "Can I help you?" What is your immediate response?
No, I'm
Uh,
fine.
No, I'm fine. No, I'm good. Yeah, exactly. No, I'm just looking, right?
Yeah.
Even though you're not just looking, you really, really need help. But it's that whole. So, but if you walked up, if they walked up to you and said, "Hey, it's a pretty sharp computer," or um, uh, "Hey, those are great back to school computers. Do you have any kids that are off to school or something?" And kind of be congenial, then it kind of breaks that ice. Do the same thing when you're asking if you can help. Say something like, "Hey, I mowed my yard today. Can I mow your yard while I'm there?" Or, "Oh, I got to go to Walgreens and wait in line today. Is there anything I can pick up for you at Walgreens today?" Or whatever. Make it specific and not general, and you have a better chance of getting in to be able to help them. Um, it matters because for many reasons, that's a good neighbor thing to do. It also matters because a very large percentage of caregivers die before their loved ones do. Dementia is it's an ultra marathon, not a sprint. And the caregiver sometimes takes the harder end of the story than the person does, because they're up. A lot of times with dementia, another thing about it is called sundowning. A lot of times they will get to where they get the day and night confused. So they'll stay up all night wandering around the house and then sleep all day. Think about if you're a full-time caregiver 24/7 and you're not wanting to do that, but you can't go to sleep. You're either going to sleep with one eye open, or you're going to sleep when they sleep and wake when they're awake. And even when they're asleep, you're all partially awake because you're afraid they'll get awake and wander out into the snow or something. One great story, not great story. Gosh, I got so many stories that aren't great, but wonderful lady I knew named Shirley, Ozarks lady. Her husband had colon cancer and he had dementia. A terrible combination. If you want to get two things together at the same time, that's a terrible combination. She was 24/7 caregiver for this wonderful man, members of the church not too far from me. And he passed away, sadly, and she never left the house other than to Weight Watchers meetings with me, actually. I wasn't the facilitator, I was a fellow Weight Watcheree. And that's about the only time she ever got out for multiple years. I want to say 4 or 5 years. He passed away. We went to his funeral and everything. And I called her and said, "Hey, Shirley, how you doing these days?" And she said, her voice was heavy, like he was still alive. She said, I went to the doctor finally for the first time after 5 years, and now I've got cancer, and I've now waited so long because I never went to the doctor when I was gone. It would have been treatable before. It's no longer treatable now. I have very limited time. And she lasted about 2 months after that. So looking after them, giving them opportunities to go to the doctor, giving them opportunities to have good times and then fun and stuff too is very good for their health. Caregiver sickness and illness is extremely prevalent. It's depending on where you look at. I've seen as low as where they kind of are real firm on the numbers, like 20% of the caregivers died before the loved one. I've seen as high as 50 before. It depends on which study you're looking at, but it's a big number. Thank you. The doctor's appointments are another big one. One other thing real quick, disaster preparedness is a good way to be a good neighbor. We live in Tornado Alley. Not everywhere's Tornado Alley, but we sure live in Tornado Alley. Have a plan for yourself for tornadoes, but also talk to your neighbor and your neighbor's caretaker, caregivers, family, and make sure they have a place to go to. If they live in a mobile home or a house without a basement or a place that looks like it maybe wouldn't be very good in a storm or whatever, think about them too, and make that part of your disaster plan to pick them up too and take them with you. Can't recommend that enough, because that's part of my job at Senior Age. I do disaster planning and recovery, and I spent some time in Hurricane Katrina cleaning up and in Joplin and stuff. And the numbers of these folks that would like to have been prepared, but they couldn't do it themselves, is very high. So if you can be that person, that bridge for them, that's wonderful.
Considering our time, can we go ahead and jump onto the random tips and ideas, which leads into some of the do's and don'ts. And I will be sure to share out the all the volunteer information and opportunities with the group in the email and online as well, because there are lots of opportunities where you can help even outside of your neighborhood. But I thought some of your do's and don'ts were really, really relevant and important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do's and don'ts are important to me, kind of too. When you're talking to them or their loved one, their caregiver, ask them how they're doing is fine, but don't ask do they know you or do they know your name. By the time you've had a loved one with dementia for a little while, you've been asked that 12,000 times. It's a sad question to even answer. You don't know the answer to it probably, and it just brings up sad memories, kind of. So if you just ask generally how they're doing is good. Ask how the caregiver is doing. That's a good thing to do. Treat them with respect, and allow them to maintain face, if, for lack of a better term. Don't quiz them with a bunch of questions. Instead, kind of be more matter of factly and stuff. Like if you're a caregiver, maybe not in the neighboring room, but a caregiver, break out the picture album, and instead of saying, "Hey, do you remember here? This is when we went to Washington D.C." Say instead, it's very simple. Instead, replace it with, "Hey, look, this is when we went to D.C. That was so fun." It lets them still be part of the memory, but it doesn't force them to answer a question that they might still be on that question when you get to the next picture and stuff. Speak a little slower to them. Don't speak over them. That's a big one. Don't speak about them to someone else while you're in front of them. Maybe that's a pet peeve of mine, but at nursing home, I see people all the time talking right in front of their loved one about their loved one to the nurse in a way that's embarrassing, and it's like, they're still, don't assume that they don't know what's going on. Assume they know more than they do. So think of it that way. Speak a little slower is good. Don't speak like I do, a million miles a minute. Speak a little slower. If you're giving choices, give a couple options instead of a whole bunch of options, 2 at the most. 2 good options. If you give them 5 options, they'll get frustrated. Music, it's kind of random, but bring music with you from their youth. My mom, would love the old hymns, but a lot of those ladies also loved. We break out Elvis sometimes. We break out 60s music sometimes, early 60s, some like Beatles and stuff, something like that. Depends on how old they are and when their prime of their life was. But for some reason, those memories stick better than others. Other don'ts, don't hesitate to call your neighbor and check in on them. We're not being Mrs. Kravitz by doing that, right? None of us are Mrs. Kravitz from Bewitched. Don't hesitate to call 911 if need be. If you don't have a way you can get with family and kind of know their situation, don't hesitate to call 911. I can tell you from working at senior age, as long as I have, way too many stories. So when in doubt, honestly, I know many people in 911 are perfectly fine with false alarm calls or a call where someone fell, they came out and just did a wellness check. It's no big deal, so don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah.
That's kind of the main stuff. Did anyone, I left 4 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions or any, sorry about that. I could talk for 20 hours on the topic, which is, it's a shame, but it's where I am. I don't know if anyone had any loved ones any stories or loved ones that have the disease, or hang on to my website, has my information on it. And I talk to people from all over the country all the time. I highly recommend the Alzheimer's Association 1-800 number. I'll put it in the chat here real quick.
And if you have a question, please take yourself off mute and ask, or put something in the chat. Either one. We'd love to hear your voices, though, if you have a question.
Yeah, the nifty thing about that 1-800 number is it's 24/7 and it's staffed by people that know the topic, and it isn't like a call center with a script. It's actually nurses and licensed social workers that have been doing this all day long, and they're extremely good. I can't recommend that enough. And definitely get to know your area agency on aging too. See, do you have the link of I put that link in there too. The area agency on aging, the ACL link is everyone in the country has an area agency on aging that's assigned to your area. If you're 60 years old or have a loved one that is, there's all sorts of things that the Older Americans Act and other things have lined up where they can get help for meals from wellness programs and all sorts of wonderful things. Senior age has a nifty thing. It really helps people with dementia too, called Patient Companion Program. That we will arrange transportation for a loved one to go to the doctor, and then we'll send one of our people with them to the doctor, and we'll take notes, so that when the doctor says you need to stop driving, and they get home and say, no, the doctor says I can keep driving all I want to, then we have a person says, oh, actually the doctor said. So it's kind of a and we arrange transportation to and from, and it's and a lot of I'm hoping a lot of their agencies on aging are going to have that too. It started with us, but we're I'm hoping other ones kind of cling on to that because it's pretty cool.
Well, I really appreciate some of the do's and don'ts. We first talked about this subject a while back. I have found myself paying closer attention to some of my older neighbors and some things that get said and done, and just I'm not trying to diagnose this, but just being aware.
Yeah.
It was something I wasn't really even on my radar to think about. And especially the wandering aspect, or when things seem different in their life,
Yeah.
Not just to pass it off as inconsequential.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. And never assume anything. And that's a good thing for any illness with them too, for that matter. If something seems different, talk to them, no harm in doing that. Talk to the neighbors, talk to the caretakers of the people that visit and stuff. I mean, we're not trying to cause controversy. We're just trying to help.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm fortunate in that I've not had anyone in my immediate family that has had dementia, but as you said, the numbers are on the rise, and so it's certainly something we need to educate ourselves about and have awareness of. And it's a high likelihood we'll have neighbors around us that are impacted by this. So not just the session live today, but the video when it goes out, share that with others, share what you've learned today with others. And Mark, I'm sorry that you're in a position where you had to learn all this stuff about this subject, but I'm so thankful that you are knowledgeable and you're willing to share your knowledge with others, and a big help.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I call it making lemonade out of Brussels sprouts. That's how I kind of refer to it. It doesn't even have the foundation of lemonade, but you can do it. There's still lots of good times to be had. So last thing real quick, let me emphasize that one more time. Don't dwell on the sad part of it. Dwell on the good parts of it. There's still lots left. If you have a loved one with a disease, hang out with them and spend time with them and enjoy the parts they have left. Don't focus on what isn't there.
That's a great reminder. Thank you.